People who performed sexual favors in a school or in the workplace to get ahead. What was it for? And what are things like now? My elder cousin moved into our house while I was in high school. He strikes up a relationship with my math teacher at the time. Suddenly I go from a C student to an A student. When my cousin said he was going to break up with her, I pretty much begged him not to for a few more weeks until the end of the school year. He kept it going for a few more weeks and I got an A grade guy. My cousin would kill me on purpose and say it was a joke. Respect to your cousin for that. Senior year of high school, our Spanish class took a 2-week trip to Mexico. 1 week was learning and the other was in Acapulco learning. Our teacher was mid-20s, and one night me and several students snuck out to the club. I went to the bathroom and saw her coming out. Both of us hammered. I said, if you don't tell I won't tell, thinking only of saving myself. She started crying. Life was over, etc. Now that I'm older I realize she was a really emotional drunk. Anyway, we went out back so she could calm down. Somehow she ended up rubbing me and at that point all thoughts went out the window. We banged by the dumpster of essentially a Pedro O'Horney's. That was the second of 5 nights there. We had sex 3 more times. Last night she had her realization of we can't do this. I said I know and I wouldn't cause trouble. We had our fun. Both were consenting adults. She was also a very generous lover. Like, not to get detailed, but that was the best I was ever taken care of. Shitty person. Because when we got off the flight she ran up and hugged her fiancé like nothing. The rest of that year, no matter what assignment I turned in, I got 100%. I wasn't going to argue. Ran into her a few years after college and she told me I still held the record for the worst written Spanish paper in her class. I Google translated the whole thing out of laziness, but I got 100% on it. She tried to rekindle a couple of times. I never obliged. She's one of those grass is always greener lives in the past type. My former boss at a tech company asked me to go away with her for the weekend with her. I declined. My buddy, being the opportunist, started banging her. I received a 2% annual raise and my buddy got a 20% raise. In hindsight, I should have banged her. Had a job at a retail store almost 10 years ago. From the day of orientation, the trainer manager had a thing for me immediately. Flirting ensued for a couple weeks until a closing shift when she took me in back and we used one of the display beds, and the sex was phenomenal. As she was secretly a freak, my oblivious ass didn't notice the wedding ring until after we hooked up, and she said her husband was cool with it. This turned into me hanging out at her apartment and hooking up every now and again. Never really turned into anything work-wise. Just a nice perk of a random job. It just fizzled after I left the job. She's since had a baby, and I've got married and had 2 as well. A professor, around 50 years old, at my old university had a tendency to date and fuck his PhD students, around mid-20s or so. It was more of a creepy man preys on his employees with father issues than PhD student sleeping with boss to get ahead though. He ended up marrying one of them and they now have children together. She remained his PhD student though until the day she got her degree. I never had much to do with their research group, but I would imagine that it was a pretty awkward place. The university knew but didn't interfere since everybody involved were adults. I'm a male and my female manager flirted with me a lot. One day she asked me out to a bar to discuss potential career moves. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I had told her that I love IT. My current job then was customer service. If you ever worked in customer service, it sucks taking back-to-back calls, so I wanted out. During that outing, she placed her hands on my leg then went up to my junk. She was a little overweight but somewhat attractive. She was also 12 years older than me. At that time I was 24 and she was 36. So we went back to my place and we fucked like rabbits. We fucked here and there for about 2 weeks. Then she said I was being moved over to internal help desk and I won't have to deal with customer service anymore. She also paid for all my certs, took me on trips, paid my rent, bought me a laptop and Xbox. One trip she took me to Vegas and gave me $3,000 to gamble with. Turns out her family owned the company, so she was really rich. Because of her I've been in IT making above average income for the last 10 years. I was accidentally getting ahead for fucking my boss once. I was completely unaware until everything ended and suddenly I got laid off. I had a female boss that had a crush on me and I found her really attractive too. I was 20, she was in her early 30s. It was a call center. I did tech support and she was the manager of our team. We flirted a little bit here and there, nothing really more than I did with the customer service girls. There was only one tech support girl and she had a girlfriend. Then one day we were doing some team lunch and she asked me to help her go pick up the food. I was just stoked to get out of taking calls. I didn't really notice we left 2 hours before the lunch until later. Hopped in her car and she said she had to get something at her house before we got the food. We got there, went inside, I said what do you need to get here and she said late and just basically jumped on me. It was great, I really liked her too. I had no clue she had planned this whole thing to get me out of the office and to her house. She literally could have just said hey we should hang out and I would have done it. I never asked her out because I thought she was out of my league. After that we hooked up for a while, keeping it quiet because she was my boss. Which was fine with me, I was a dorky 20 years old getting laid regularly. Then one day we were drunk and fucking and she started crying. She's sobbing saying why am I so terrible that the only way I can get a guy is by being his boss and making him fuck me. I was shocked and I responded with I am not fucking you because you're my boss. You're super awesome and super fucking hot. She was a short girl with hourglass figure, little thick but in all the right places. You are not making me do anything. I wanted you for months before any of this started. Only reason I never asked you out was I didn't want to make it awkward at work. She then started listing all the shit she does at work to keep me close and make me like her and make my life better. I found out I was making more than anyone on my team by a decent margin. I got the best desk that other people apparently were jealous of, I didn't care. I was on a few layoff lists and she made sure to get my name off them. Somebody complained about me to her a lot because I said that's fucking stupid to them when they said something fucking stupid and she just trashed the complaints. I told her, stop doing all that shit. I still like you and you do not have to do any of that at work. Fuck, if I lost my job, I'd find a new one and I'd probably be happy because we wouldn't have to sneak around. The thing is, I think she was attracted to me because of all this shit she did. I think she felt like she was in control of me, and when she found out I didn't actually care about that shit or feel like I was in debt to her, she ended it, and next time layoffs happened I was gone. In the 90s, I had an affair with a woman who hired me at a startup.com. I was 24. She was late 40s. I had graduated with a degree in philosophy and was running a blog when she hired me as a copywriter graphic artist, a position that I was not qualified for. She installed me next to her office on the floor below sales, a basically deserted space where we were alone all day. We had sex at work several times, but mostly kept our activities to her place. She also found me a nearby apartment, arranged for me to live in a motel until it was ready, and involved herself in other aspects of my life. She was not an attractive or pleasant woman and the nature of our relationship was transactional, at least at first. I also worked my ass off, so I wasn't coasting just because I was fucking her. Anyways, the company went bust just 9 months after I joined. By then, I had been promoted to content development and had the 4th highest position in the company. I was also basically living with this woman who had turned out to be possessive, delusional, and overall nuts. When the company folded, she started talking about us moving to another startup and getting married. At that point, I ended it and went to grad school instead. Worked in a warehouse 10 years ago. I had the most physical job there, constantly slagging around 130 pounds and product by hand. So I was reasonably jacked after about 4 months there. My job was automated at every other warehouse we owned, but the office manager seemed to like looking at me, and I beat the robots in efficiency and accuracy, so she kept me around. She asked for my help moving some heavy shit one day in her office at the end of the day, and I didn't think anything of it. Shoulder was really sore that day, and she noticed me favoring it, so when I was done, she told me she used to work as a massage therapist, and offered to help my shoulder. Literally thought nothing of it until 3 minutes into the massage. Her hands were no longer on my shoulder, instead, on my junk. She was reasonably attractive,
and everyone else had left for the day, so I took advantage of the situation and fucked her brains out. 3 days later, I got a $3 an hour raise. The company was 4 months into a pay freeze. Her justification: I was beating the robots. We fucked a few times a week, and I got an extra few days off a month. Paid, because she was concerned about my shoulder.